Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's a forensic deep dive into a catastrophe.
It really is.
We're analyzing a stack of fragmented source materials, personal chronicles, historical notes, and they all chart the collision of two fundamentally different men.
A hardened tyrant and a desperate scholar.
And the primordial horror they jointly unleashed. We're really looking at the moment when two very human flaws, the pursuit of absolute power on one hand and just paralyzing parental fear on the other, opened a door that, should have stayed sealed for eternity.
And what we hold here isn't just history, is it? It's more like a map. Map that charts the disintegration of psychological and moral integrity against this impossible cosmic backdrop.
A map of compromises.
Exactly. We are synthesizing a chronicle detailing High Templar Venarius' terrifying ascent, which was fueled by a really deep-seated childhood trauma that demanded, absolute control.
And on the other side of that coin, the catastrophic, truly tragic fall of Aldous Caesarius.
A man driven by a simple, tangible fear for his young daughter, Zena.
So our goal here is to synthesize these fragments, to build a single forensically detailed narrative. We're going to be analyzing the motivations, the specific moments of compromise, the power shifts,
all of it.
and the utterly devastating consequences as if these events were unfolding right now in front of us. We have to understand the internal logic of a system that was designed around fear and how that very logic ultimately became the single greatest threat to existence.
Indeed. We are charting the highly specific chain of events, extracted from their own words, their own memories, that culminated in the freeing of the elder.
And the ultimate necessary and just deeply painful sacrifice of the man who became known in later chronicles as the Shaper. Okay, so let's start by unpacking the psychological architecture of High Templar Venarius. It's where it all begins.
It has to be.
When we look at the fragments from his youth, we've got the ultra distant memory and the circle of nostalgia, we are immediately confronted with this massive contradiction.
Right.
He describes his early life as cold and harsh, dictated by the structures of Oriath, yet he insists he wanted for so little. He credits his mother for that.
And he even says he was a happy child, which is just, it's so jarring when you see what comes next. He was happy until the very specific moment the cruel truth was revealed.
So what was it? What was this foundational trauma that just cracked his entire world apart?
The sources, and specifically the palace grounds memory, they suggest that Venarius' mother was a widow, and she was relying on alms provided by the courts.
The courts being the secular arm of the Templars.
Exactly. So this is where that power dynamic is first established, right?
Mm.
The family is completely dependent on the very organization he will one day lead.
And the first critical trauma, it happens when a man in uniform visits.
Mm-hmm. He says that going forward, she has to collect this vital aid in person at the church.
This is a small change in procedure.
It seems like it. But the subtle shift from passive reception to this active mandatory collection, it already hints at manipulation, at a change in the terms of their survival.
And Venarius, he's just a young boy at this point. He's left alone in these austere palace gardens, just waiting as the sun sets.
And the return of his mother, it's devastating. This is the moment his childhood security just evaporates. She comes back pale, her eyes are red, and her clothes are torn.
The memory notes the silence, doesn't it? She doesn't look at him. They walk home in silence, and he hears her crying later that night.
And the man in uniform, he returns. Frequently after that. He brings toys and food. But the young Venarius, he states it explicitly. I don't like him.
That right there, that's the harsh foundation of his entire ideology, the very seed of his tyranny. We have to analyze how this profound shame inflicted on his mother translates into an ideology of fear-based control for the son.
It has to. This memory immediately establishes the Templar system, the very organization distributing the alms, not as a benevolent entity, but as a source of veiled terror, of humiliation, of this silent pain inflicted upon the very people it claims to protect.
And the horror of it is that the man who inflicted the suffering is also the one who brought the toys and food.
Yes, that's the poison. That moral paradox, that power, is both the source of suffering and the only source of provision. It must have just deeply warped his young mind.
Of course.
Venarius' young mind begins to associate power not with any kind of moral righteousness, but with these necessary, terrifying acts that bring gifts while simultaneously inflicting suffering.
And the unspoken tension here, it's that he has witnessed the complete, silent vulnerability of the one person who protected him. and he feels utterly powerless to do anything about it.
Absolutely. This experience, it just erodes his belief in kindness. It replaces it with the cold logic that the only way to avoid being the victim is to possess the power that inflicts the harm.
So that's where it starts. The quest for absolute safety begins its slow, dark transformation into the quest for absolute control.
And if that traumatic incident was the trigger, then what follows are the formal lessons in ruthlessness.
Starting with the City Park execution. He sneaks out, he's compelled to be brave, swearing to himself, "I will not look away."
But the target of the execution is a child. A Karui boy caught stealing. And the public snap of the rope, followed by the crowd's cheer, it just overwhelms him.
It's a textbook study in political conditioning, isn't it? The power of the state, in the form of the courts, is displayed through swift, public, absolute brutality.
And Venarius doesn't just see justice. He sees the crowd, society itself, cheering for the elimination of the vulnerable.
Which teaches him two lessons at once.
Exactly. First, the cost of being outside the rules is absolute annihilation. And second, the way to maintain societal peace is through a spectacle of overwhelming, cheered-on violence.
So his initial desire to prove his bravery is just. It's instantly overwritten by this terrifying, visceral fear of becoming the victim himself.
And if the execution was a lesson in the state's power over rule breakers, the next formative moment, the distant landing near exile, showed him the absolute fragility of his own status.
He's only 8 years old. He gets trapped in a knot of ragged bodies, misidentified as a vagabond or Mariketh, and clapped in irons.
And his desperate cries of innocence, "I'm not one of them," they're completely ignored.
This is the moment that drives his absolute obsession with systemic, rigid control.
It has to be. He learns that even with his perceived status as a Templar beneficiary, mere happenstance, bad luck, being in the wrong place, smelling like the wrong people, can lead instantly to exile, imprisonment, ruin. He was almost lost.
So this fear of random chaos, this proximity to the abyss of the exiled, it cements the necessity of total, brutal control, absolute separation from the vagabonds.
For Venarius, control is the only viable shield against what he now sees as a fundamentally unjust and chaotic world. He stops wanting to protect his mother. He starts realizing the only way to protect her is to embody the very power that makes the world rigid and predictable.
Which brings us directly to his stated motivation in The Circle of Regret. He claims he sacrificed a life of love for one of responsibility.
Right.
But do the sources suggest he genuinely believed this, or was it just, rhetoric to justify the cruelty he was about to unleash?
That is the critical distinction. The source suggests he did genuinely believe he was acting out of necessity. And that is so much more dangerous than simple malice.
Of course.
It's a twisted defensive application of his childhood trauma. The ultimate stated drive is to create a system where she and, others like her might be kept safe from the humiliation and vulnerability he witnessed.
But he's redefined safety. It's not freedom, it's total authoritarian stability.
Precisely. He takes the mantle of the Templar, and he finds peace and purpose not in faith, but in the echoing marble halls of absolute, predictable power.
And the moment where this doctrine of tyranny is officially formalized, it's crystallized in the distant courthouse memory. The courts are burning, political power is shifting, High Templars are rapidly supplanting one another.
Chaos.
Yeah, accusations of sinner, heretic are flying everywhere. This must have looked to him like the very chaos he had spent his life trying to control.
It was chaos defined by mortal whim, the very vulnerability he hated. And this is where he stops being a victim of the system's cruelty and consciously decides to become the master of it.
His patron, terrified of being caught in the political shifting tides, whispers the advice. It's all about power, and we have none.
And the immediate tactical instruction is to be unseen and unheard. But Venarius, he transforms this tactical advice into a philosophical doctrine.
The crucial doctrine that dictates his entire reign. Trust without leverage is vulnerability.
Precisely. He internalizes that the power structure itself is fragile, it's easily corrupted, constantly shifting. Therefore, loyalty is useless unless it is secured by absolute leverage control, fear, or a debt that can never be repaid.
And Xana, later reflecting on this, she confirms this pivot. She notes, that was the moment Venarius decided to seize life and vie for power. That was the moment doom for men like my father was assured.
The student has internalized the lesson. He's decided to rise above the shifting mortal whims to become the unshakable stabilizer.
And to achieve that stability, he has to make moral compromises he can never acknowledge. We see the direct consequence in the Circle of Anguish, where he admits he condemned an innocent man to the pyres.
And he realizes that to admit the mistake would be to condemn myself.
So he can't.
He can't. The internal logic of a tyrant is fascinatingly resilient. He cannot admit fault, so he has to re-engineer his entire worldview to ensure that crime was not only necessary but, in a way, righteous.
So this act of injustice, rather than breaking him, it becomes a psychological driving force.
He has to double down. The crime justifies the means, necessitating his path as the chosen necessary evil for the greater good. He believes his only choice is to strive harder, to enforce the strict rule that he believes is the only barrier protecting society.
So he justifies all his ruthlessness by saying that without him, the beautiful public spaces, our services for the ill, everything he claims to protect would just crumble.
Right. He convinces himself that the sacred institution is flawed out of necessity, created from necessary compromises, and always vulnerable to mortal whims.
It's the ultimate form of self-deception.
It is. He secretly despised the Templars for their inherent corruption, the corruption he witnessed firsthand in the shame inflicted upon his mother, yet he resolves to fix it by being the most powerful and ruthless of them all.
He rejects true faith.
And replaces it with a choking, stagnant belief in his own righteous oppression. He is now the fully formed High Templar, absolutely certain that his ambition is the world's only safety mechanism.
So, on one side we have Venarius, an absolute monarch of fear, and on the other, we introduce Valdo Caesarius, the chief archon of the Oriath Academy in Theopolis.
And we should clarify what an archon is in this context. It's a high-ranking scholar, an engineer, right? Someone tasked with applying knowledge for the state.
Precisely. And Valdo is an unwilling servant. He's tasked with repairing and weaponizing a strange, ancient golden machine found in the ruins of Rayclast, the device we now recognize as the map device.
And his chronicle, starting in the Book of Memories, page 1, it immediately establishes this desperate power imbalance. He struggles internally with Venarius's malice and hunger, yet he accepts the orders.
His compliance isn't professional duty, though. It's born of immediate, visceral, tangible fear.
He notes that many families who refused the High Templar have all vanished now.
The stakes are crystal clear. Refusal means his daughter, Xana, vanishes.
And this is critical. Venarius has successfully cultivated a system where fear is not just a philosophical concept, but a tactical tool. It dictates the behavior of even his most brilliant subordinates.
So Valdo prioritizes the immediate physical safety of his daughter over any moral resistance to Venarius's horrific vision.
And the cost of this compliance is immediately felt, even before the cosmic horror is revealed.
He records a sign of dread, doesn't he? His quiet young daughter, Xana, only 5 years old, suffers these unusual nightmares and tantrums during the first weeks he spent working on the device.
He dismisses it as grief for her mother at first, but later he wonders if it was a sign, a faint echo of the terror he was about to unleash.
That subtle detail, it just highlights the immediate spiritual contamination.
Yeah.
He's already bringing the cosmic toxicity of his work home.
And the tension just builds and builds until the moment the first contact happens, and it happens out of sheer exhaustion. Valdo is stuck. He can't rebuild the relic because a critical piece didn't exist in their physical reality.
He works tirelessly until he just collapses, falls into a deep sleep at the device's base.
And he awakens in a world that must have seemed like a paradise compared to the stifling grayness and crushing fear of Oriath.
It's the perfect escape hatch, isn't it?
It is. The skies are blue, not gray. The air is warm and peaceful. It is the absolute antithesis of Venarius's tyranny. Valdo notes he was immediately seduced by it. Like a temptress, the dreamlands seduced him.
This isn't just a geographical shift, it's a psychological one. He's found a temporary respite from the suffocating dread of the High Templar.
It's in this beautiful landscape that he meets the shade, a whisper of embodied smoke that communicates not through crude language, but through thoughts and pictures, colors and emotions that just billow directly into his mind.
But we have to remember the note in the source material.
The shade watches Valdo with the patience of a prowling lion.
Yeah, that underscores the deep premeditation of this entity. The shade is not a desperate accident. It is a careful predator sizing up its mark.
And Valdo, eager for answers and still thinking within the framework of his academic task, fixing the map device, he immediately volunteers every detail of his life.
Oriath, his daughter, the device, everything.
And the shade confirms the machine is a doorway between my world and the dreamlands, framing the situation as a search for something lost, something broken by villains and thieves.
And here it comes, the dangerous bargain, the critical moral compromise that seals Valdo's fate and in a way mirrors Venarius' own self-deception.
The Shade offers to help rebuild the missing piece, promising a path to completion. And Valdo agrees wholeheartedly, explicitly driven by the fear of what will become of Xana under Venarius' reign.
So his motivation is pure protection, but his method is just reckless.
Absolutely. The Shade only asks Valdo to return the favor when the time came. And Valdo, bathed in the soothing sun of the Dreamlands, finds immediate peace in this agreement. He completely ignores the fundamental untrustworthiness of any cosmic entity that appears when you are at your most vulnerable.
He trades the tangible threat of Venarius for the abstract promise of an otherworldly being.
And as the weeks pass, we see his descent accelerate. He transitions from forced compliance under Venarius to a secret, almost hubristic ambition with the Shade.
His inferiority, his internal world, it shifts dramatically.
It does. He's no longer just working on the device. Every night he sleeps at its base, waking up in the Dreamlands, apprenticing himself to the Shade.
He learns a new type of power, how to shape and build things from my imagination.
And he lies. He lies constantly to Venarius, making excuses, and he begins to desire the power for its own sake. He states his arrogance directly. I didn't want him to know of the power I'd uncovered. I wanted these Dreamlands to be my secret, to belong to me and me alone. Not even my daughter could know.
And that is the critical turning point. He started off trying to shield Xana from one tyrant, Venarius, but he ends up cultivating a secret private sanctuary and a secret power for himself,
He's been corrupted by the lure of knowledge and control.
creating a parallel ambition that, ironically, mirrors the secrecy and lust for private control that defined Venarius' own rise to power. Both men sought a secret shield, and both sought it through a massive moral compromise.
The honeymoon of secret power, it ends. It ends the moment the missing segment, this bizarre component meant to hold mystical map images, is finally formed. The Shade immediately demands its one favor.
And it moves from that subtle seduction to direct imposition.
It does so by attempting to manufacture sympathy, crafting a narrative designed to exploit Valdo's inherent distrust of state power.
The Shade reveals its past through these dramatic, seductive visions. It was once a proud king destroyed by terrorists called the Watchers of Decay.
Who used a powerful blade, the Starforge, to divorce its spirit from its body, cursing it to wander while its physical form turned to stone.
And Valdo is completely primed to believe this narrative, isn't he?
It fits his lived experience perfectly. Powerful entities like Venarius inflict cruelty and destroy kingdoms. Valdo instantly feels mortified, seeing the Shade as a victim of state violence and the Watchers as villains.
He's emotionally invested. He wants to see the king restored.
So the Shade leads him deep into the dark, foreboding forest of the Dreamlands, to a forgotten cave, revealing the horrifying reality of its imprisonment. A statue cast from black marble, pierced by the Starforge, amidst an altar built of ancient wood and bone.
And Valdo feels a chill. The effigy is utterly terrifying to behold, which completely contradicts the Shade's beautiful, gentle visions.
The time for subtlety is past. The Shade imposes the explicit command directly into Valdo's mind, bypassing words entirely. Pull the blade from my chest. Remove the sword. Free me.
The stakes are no longer abstract. Valdo is standing at the precipice of an action that will change everything.
And this is the moment he finally resists.
He reaches out, but he is seized by a great horror. For the first time, doubt entered my mind. He asks more questions. He resolves to hold off, actively refusing the command.
After a lifetime defined by submitting to Venarius' tyranny, Valdo finally attempts to seize control of his own decisions, even against a cosmic entity whose power he barely comprehends.
And the consequence of this rebellion is immediate and devastating.
The Shade flies into a fury. It flames a terrible, violent red. It doesn't fight him physically. It attacks his most profound, visceral fear. It forces images of murder and mutilation into Valdo's mind. Terrible things done to my daughter.
The cruelty is absolute, surgical, and perfectly targeted at Valdo's central motivation.
Valdo flees in pure panic. He runs through the dark forest, seeking refuge in a small, abandoned foxhole, weeping in revulsion and terror until he physically collapses back into his Oriath laboratory.
He is instantly purged of his secret ambition, and it's replaced by this consuming drive for protection.
His immediate action confirms this shift. He races home in the dead of night, wakes Xana, hugs her tight, and promises he will never, ever let her go again.
His internal world has been completely reset by the targeted horror he experienced. The Dreamlands are no longer a sanctuary. They are the ultimate threat.
Months pass. Valdo locks himself in his study, delving into the darkest tomes, consumed by fear, recognizing the slimed and poisoned tendrils of fear grip ever tighter. He realizes the cosmic horror he was dealing with.
And his scholarly background now becomes his weapon.
It does. He finally receives crucial, saving knowledge from the scholar Aramir, confirming the existence of the Watchers of Decay and providing Valdo with their records, the essential, unvarnished truth that entirely contradicts the Shade's seductive lies.
And the truth, Valdo records, is the ultimate horror. It elevates the stakes far beyond the personal. The Shade is not a king, is the Elder, a creature of malignant madness born of that oblivion from before time itself.
And we have to clarify the hierarchy here, as Valdo came to understand it. The Elder is the consciousness, the malignant madness. It fashioned the beautiful dreamlands specifically as a hunting ground.
Preying on younger flesh, it became the bogeyman.
And it was feasting upon their nightmares. And why nightmares? Because Valdo records that imagination that truly satiated it. The beauty that seduced Valdo was merely bait, a carefully cultivated lie.
And this sustenance, this feeding, it cultivated the Elder's true goal, to sustain and birth forth its true master, the Decay.
The oblivion from outside time and space.
This clarifies the existential scale of the catastrophe. Valdo has been working to unleash a cosmic fungal monstrosity bent on universal destruction, the true master of the Elder.
So, the Watchers, the supposed terrorists the Shade complained about, were actually heroes. They built the map device not to travel, but specifically to lock the kingdom. And they used the Starforged blade to trap the physical form in cold stone, granting a kind of eternal rest.
But Valdo realizes the terrible implication. The Elder's agency roams free, and his private, fearful meetings with the Shade must have invigorated and refreshed its fervor.
He has gone from unwilling servant to the most active accomplice in the potential end of the world.
So Valdo's desperate research, which is now driven by this existential terror, meant completely neglecting his original commission for the map device.
And his secrecy, his lack of progress, it immediately bred suspicion in the High Templar.
Yeah.
It brings the human tyranny right back into focus.
Valdo admits in his records that he was so caught up in the cosmic nightmare that he forgot his work as an Archon.
And Venarius cannot tolerate independence or mystery in his subordinates. The consequence is immediate and brutal. At noon, just as Valdo neared the completion of his new device, the one meant to exile the Elder Venarius, and his guards interrupt him in a furious rage.
Venarius instantly destroys the research. He tosses Valdo's exile machine to the ground, demanding to know why Valdo focused on something else.
Valdo is clapped in irons and led off to Theopolis prisons for insubordination. This is Venarius successfully reasserting absolute immediate control.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Venarius, a man obsessed with threats, is confronted with a subordinate obsessing over an entity that threatens reality itself.
Yet his first, most powerful instinct is to destroy the research and punish the insubordination. He prioritizes maintaining the rigid human hierarchy over addressing the cosmic threat.
So Valdo's attempts at secret resistance have failed completely. He's landed right back under the High Templar's physical and psychological thumb.
The punishment is designed for public humiliation. Valdo is publicly shamed, stripped of his robes, a symbol of his status and intellect, and beaten but an inch from death.
And Venarius demands to know, one final time, why he failed his commission.
And Valdo makes his ultimate fatal mistake.
In a moment of absolute desperation and, as he calls it, foolishness, he chooses honesty. He tells Venarius everything.
The Elder, the Decay, the Starforged, the cosmic truth revealed by Aramir. He hoped to appeal to Venarius's better nature, believing that the sheer scale of the threat would force them to unite the Templar army against the Elder.
The heartbreaking wisdom from the subsequent chronicle entry is immediate. You should never appeal to a man's better nature. He may not have one.
Venarius, whose entire life was built on trauma and the doctrine that trust without leverage is vulnerability, has zero capacity for empathy. Zero capacity for a unified defense against an abstract horror, especially when it comes from an insubordinate scholar.
Venarius's reaction is immediate and purely tactical exploitation, confirming his doctrine.
He doesn't ally. He takes Xana at knife point. He immediately takes the ultimate leverage over Valdo. The man who grew up watching his mother suffer in silence now uses the same brutal tactic, targeting a subordinate's deepest fear to secure his own goal.
He forces Valdo to use the map device to transport all of them, Venarius, his men, Valdo, and Xana, into the Dreamlands.
And Valdo, faced with the immediate threat of the knife to his daughter's life, he does exactly as asked. The immediate, tangible fear of the High Templar triumphs over the abstract, cosmic fear of oblivion.
They arrive in the Atlas. Valdo feels sick, Santa cries in fear. But the High Templar and his men, they marvel at such wonders.
That disconnect is immediate. Venarius sees the landscape as a tool, a prize. Valdo sees it as a trap. They quickly encounter the silent shade, the very essence of the Elder.
And Venarius, the politician, he seizes the initiative. He speaks first, framing the entire interaction on his terms and completely disregarding Valdo's panicked warnings about the danger they face.
His opening line to the shade is calculated, condescending, and just dismissive of Valdo's intellect. He tells me you are king of this land. My poor, poor scholar says that you are imprisoned, that you need a key.
He positions Valdo as incompetent and himself as the capable, decisive intermediary. He is negotiating the terms of cosmic power as if it were a simple land deal.
And his calculated offer is perfectly aligned with his ambition. I can be that key for you.
The shade, listening, and it's noted as smoldering smugly, it pauses heavily. This perverse, pregnant silence fills the air between the human tyrant and the cosmic horror.
And the shade, communicating directly through imagery, casts an image and a thought upon all their minds, asking Venarius the ultimate question, what dost thou want?
A direct acknowledgement of Venarius' self-interest.
And Venarius smiles. He gives the final, defining answer that confirms his ultimate motivation and disregard for the horrific stakes Valdo revealed. He doesn't want safety or justice or protection. His ultimate desire, forged in the shame of his childhood, is pure control.
Why? Power, of course. For Venarius, the Elder is not an existential threat. It is merely a means to achieve the absolute authority he craves. His ambition has made him utterly blind to the reality of oblivion.
The negotiation is over the moment Venarius speaks the word power. The shade splutters into a great shimmering blaze and just rushes toward the dark forest, leading the High Templar and his captives to the terrifying effigy and altar.
This is the climax of the chronicle. The moment Venarius achieves the power he believes will protect him absolutely. The Elder imposes the command one last time, pull the sword from my chest.
And Venarius, in all his vanity and his confidence that he can tame this power, he doesn't hesitate for a second. He takes the Starforged blade and yanks it forward, believing he is unlocking a cosmic alliance.
The result, however, is immediate and absolute annihilation for him and his men.
A tremendous earthquake shakes the land, as if the ground itself is cowering from the sheer catastrophe. The Elder bursts forth from the cold stone, no longer the seductive shade, but the thing of malignant madness.
And we see the symbolism here. The Starforge, the blade the Watchers use to imprison the creature, drops from Venarius' quivering hand, and the small protective white light in its hilt shrinks, immediately extinguished by the great darkness of a tentacular void.
Hope is gone. The horror is revealed in its purest form. Valdo immediately turns, his final protective instinct dominating, and he shields Xana's eyes, grasping the true scope of the Elder's power.
The Elder is free, and it no longer needs to communicate in seductive visions. It begins to feed, starved from millennium upon millennium of constraint.
The description of this feeding is visceral, terrifying. The sound is screaming and mad gibbering. The bodies of Venarius and his men shrivel, their life and essence fleeing from them in a moment.
Venarius, who dedicated his life to preventing vulnerability, pays the ultimate price for his hunger for power in his complete and immediate obliteration. He traded a localized, predictable human tyranny for cosmic, tentacular oblivion.
But Valdo, even as the carnage unfolds around him, focuses only on one single immediate objective: escape. While the Elder is preoccupied with its feast, Valdo grabs the map device Venarius had dropped.
They run back toward the portal home, Valdo recognizing that the decay, the ultimate fungal monstrosity, the Elder's master, will manifest once the Elder has fully fed. The window for escape is closing rapidly.
They collapse back into Oriath, and Valdo, now consumed by his protective resolve, realizes he is the only one who knows the shaping powers. The intimate academic mechanics of the map device and the structure of the dreamlands he helped map. He understands he holds the key to exile.
He knows the creature cannot be killed, only contained.
With no time to waste, he jams a nearby tool, a tool of his own academic trade, into the infernal device, ensuring its function is irrevocably altered from a gateway into a mechanism of exile. He bids Xana to hide in the laboratory, securing her immediate safety.
And then comes the final redemptive act, the great sacrifice, the act that transforms him from the fearful scholar into the eternal guardian.
With the portal flickering and shrinking steadily, Valdo turns back and steps forward into the dreamlands alone for one final time. He became the Shaper, lost forever, but having ensured the Elder did not follow them immediately, he used the very device he was forced to build to contain the horror.
His sacrifice bought time, but it cost him his entire existence. His last words, recorded later as the Shaper, are just heartbreakingly simple. They encapsulate his defining motivation and loss.
My last waking moments looked very much like this place. I miss it. I miss her. He died protecting his daughter and the world from the horror his initial compliance had unleashed.
But the shadow of Venarius is long. He did not simply disappear. Xana confirms he was trapped and slain in the Atlas, his thoughts fragmented into tiny motes to be lost on the wind during the feeding frenzy.
His soul became Kavas, initially amnesiac, just wandering through the Atlas landscape, unable to remember his name or his past. But those memories, they eventually synthesize, and Venarius returns, in a new, cosmic, and terrifyingly persistent form.
He is still the High Templar, and his core, trauma-driven motivation remains utterly intact despite the obliteration he suffered.
He remembers. I sought power to wield against evil. Now I can protect Rayclast properly. He retains his absolute terrifying justification. Even as a cosmic fragment, his rationale is unwavering. I feel the moral weight of what I must do to protect Rayclast. I accept my guilt without shame. It is my gift to humanity.
The self-deception that defined his tyranny is now literally immortal.
Even in his fragmented essence, Venarius sees his demise and subsequent cosmic entanglement as a validation of his original toxic goal. He is now focused on the magnum opus, demanding unification against the great tide of evil by uniting the minds of the people.
His belief that his methods are justified ambition continues to drive him. It makes him a perpetual existential threat to the stability Valdo sought to achieve. Rayclast will unite. This shall be my great work, the minds of the people made one. What stands out most profoundly in this chronicle is the paradox of human motivation. Both men, Venarius seeking absolute control for safety and Valdo sacrificing everything to save his daughter, ended up contributing fundamentally to the unleashing of the very evil they feared.
Absolutely. The trauma of Venarius's youth drove him to pursue power as a shield, but that shield made him absolutely blind and utterly vulnerable to the cosmic horror he was actively freeing.
And what this chronicle teaches us, you, the listener, is the devastating consequence of moral shortcuts and the danger of defining righteousness by necessity.
Venarius's belief that he had to accept my guilt without shame to achieve his righteous cause became his downfall and nearly the downfall of the world. He traded a localized, predictable human tyranny for the threat of cosmic oblivion.
It's a predictable result when control is sought for control's sake, rather than for morality or wisdom.
And Valdo, despite his initial cowardice, he found his courage in the absolute rejection of that horror, paying the ultimate price to protect the world.
It's the ultimate tragic irony of their combined efforts. The Watchers of Decay used the map device to trap the Elder. Valdo, the scholar, tried to use a similar device to exile it. Venarius, the tyrant, used the device to free it.
And now, Venarius's fragmented consciousness, the High Templar who craves absolute, unified control, is trapped within the very system Valdo built to control these chaotic worlds.
Which leads to the final provocative thought of this deep dive. The Elder cannot be killed, and its agency roams free.
Valdo, as the Shaper, managed to exile it temporarily. But Venarius, even in his fragmented, guilt-ridden afterlife, still seeks to use that same cosmic power to enforce his goal of a unified defense through the magnum opus.
So if the Elder feeds on imagination, and Venarius's essence is now trapped within the very mechanism Valdo built to control it,
what happens when a fragmented, highly ambitious mind begins actively shaping the reality of the Atlas, the repository of infinite possibility and imagination, for the sake of its own twisted, righteous, and universally enforced cause?